I'm Helen Clitheroe, by the way. Don't know if I introduced myself. So welcome. I'll just put that on the screen. So when we open the floor to questions, as video analysis is not necessarily my area of expertise, I thought we could just discuss what's been discussed on the video and maybe share our knowledge between us. I've got my colleague Andy in the background here, so he'll be putting the questions on the screen when it comes to that part of the event. So sit down and enjoy this video.
So my talk today, a little bit about apps that we can use, and I'm going to show you how to use the apps a little bit, but my main focus really is what you're going to do with it. It's all well and good filming someone, but what you're looking at. Okay, so I looked at about 20 different apps. A lot of them do the same, a lot of them are quite clunky. So these are two main ones I'm going to focus on. So Coach's Eye, $4.99 to start with, and then you've got to pay a yearly subscription if you want to really get anything useful out of it. But they've got lots of channels on there where you can get looking at other videos, so like running, but their main focus seems to be baseball and sort of other sports like that really. So, but it's really useful for running if you use it in that context as well. But my main focus is going to be on Huddle, so that's free to download and it's quite user friendly as well. But again, you can get the Elite or that Pro version, which can be useful again if you're using it a lot in your practice. But what I'd say is, don't use it a lot in your practice. As the other guys have sort of alluded to, you've got eyes, and that's your biggest skill. And all your athlete knowledge, your coaching knowledge, that's got to be your biggest thing. If you're going, not sure what's going on, film it, slow it down, then have a look. Use the professionals around you, and that can help you progress on, but it shouldn't be your first port of call at any point really. So let's go on to the next one. So Huddle. So when you open up the app, so I've used Apple, so apologise if there's any Samsung or other device users out there, but I imagine it looks fairly similar on those as well. So on this one here, when you open up, it lists all your videos, saying down the side you get other options, so for recording videos, so looking at importing videos here, and then you've got a few options for creating a team and your own profile as well, so you can link quite well with other people that have got the app as well. And once you click on a video, you get a few options down the bottom, so play, share, but there you can share it by email or you can share it within the app to other people that use it as well, and then you can add tags as well and favourite if it's a particularly good video that you want to use. And so tags are useful for going if you want to separate it for your individual athletes, that sort of thing, just make it quite user friendly. So when you click onto one of the videos, this is what you get. So down this side you have all your annotation bits and bobs. So this is so you can draw lines on the athlete and sort of just look at what's going on and try and get a better picture really. Down the bottom, this is your scrolling wheel, so you can again just do frame by frame. I'll forget to say it later, so when you're recording, the best thing to do is the highest frame rate you can, because otherwise it's quite clunky, and you'll see that in a few of my videos. I've made that mistake, and the feet get really blurry, so you can't really see what you're looking at. So using a higher frame rate, which all the apps do, they do 240 frames a second. So if you're using 30, 60, 90, you're not going to get that picture that you want. You're not really going to see as much as you would like to. And then down this side here as well, you can slow it down sort of to full speed, half speed, or right down to 1/8 of the speed. So and then play button down there. You can also compare it. So this button up here allows you to put two videos on at the same time. So this top one you could have something from maybe 3 months ago, then you've done a conditioning program, you've tried and worked on those imperfections, tried to change them, and you can add another one underneath, and you can get them to run concurrently, so you can look at any differences and see whether you've actually improved their form. It's also good feedback for the athlete then as well, so you can go, okay, this is what I've been working on, this is what you look like now. So it's that visual feedback that a lot of people like these days. Like I say, kids love their phones, don't they? You can never get them away from it. That actually visually being able to see that sort of thing can actually be really good. And you can say you can have the two wheels then as well, so you can sort of tinker it to make sure it sort of syncs up as well. I think it's really useful to have them like this, so this side-on view and this rear view as well. And I'll go into talking about more about that later on. But it means you've got a good comparison, because you can look at something side-on and go, something's not right there. but when you look at it from a different angle, you go, oh, actually, that's not a problem at all. So it's all about context. So by using different angles, you can really keep things in a good context. And then you can draw pretty little lines on it, which makes sort of things stick out a little bit. But say, I'll go on to all these lines and stuff in a minute, and what they actually mean, but it's just to show you how the app works. Okay. And then Coach's Eye, very similar. So this is the first screen you'll look at. Okay, and again, you can sort of click on a video. You can import from down the bottom here, and then that's with videos imported. Again, with the bottom, so you can get them from lots of different sources. Again, the only reason I managed to get a trial version, so I could actually use the app. If you don't pay for it, you don't get to use any of this. It's just what you record on your phone. So Coach and I, unless you want to pay, I think it's $8.99 a month or $3.99 a month, depending on what packages you get in. It's quite restrictive on what you can do. And then again, same idea. All very similar layout. It's a little bit lower down with your annotation stuff, bigger scrolling wheel, and again your comparison buttons up there, and the chords at the top as well. Okay, and again, lines are a little bit thicker, so it depends what you like using, really. And again, this is how you'd import stuff. So you can create sort of teammates, so you can have a bigger team. So again, because it's American based, I think, they tend to have their baseball teams, their football teams, their American football teams. So a lot of it's based around that, really. Okay, and again, you can import from your GoPro as well. And you can do that with both of them, to be fair. So GoPro is really good sort of frame rate as well, really good quality, and they're probably easier to record, especially if you're doing it out on the road and things like that. You haven't got to try and chase them and get them run over the top of it, and you can just leave it recording as well. So a lot of athletes will change what they're doing when you're recording them. So it's good to catch them when they're not looking. Okay, so why video analysis? So there's lots of pros and lots of cons. So I've tried to break it down to some nice simple things, really, just to make you think about what you're doing. So pros, slow motion. Yeah, you can't see everything when people are running quick, and so it's really good to be able to slow that down and go, okay, what's going on there? What's actually happening with that athlete? But it doesn't always show the bigger picture. If you slow something down, you'll always find a problem. Okay, if you look at a still, or you look at things too much in depth, you could look at Kipchoge, or someone that's got this perfect running style. If you look at it enough, you go, yeah, that foot's not quite right. So you need to look at it with movement, with context, really, to make sure that you're moving in the right direction with it. Otherwise, you're chasing your tail a little bit. Isolate the issue as well. So once you've found something, and you go in, okay, I've looked at the athlete history, they constantly have this problem, they've had 3 stress fractures now, 3 years in a row, what can we be doing? That's when you can start looking at it. If they haven't got a problem, you don't necessarily need to be looking at something straight away, or trying to change too much. A few people might disagree with that, going, oh, well, let's perfect them. Like if they're progressing, they're running well, unless it's something really obvious, I wouldn't change too much. And we'll see that in a few videos in a minute. It's a good reference source, and it's easy to share, as we alluded to just now. You can share it with your athletes, you can share it with other professionals. So if you've got a good team set up with a physio, strength conditioning coach, okay, you can get that good link. Again, obviously, if you've got the athlete's permission to be sharing the videos, etc. as well. And you can compare old footage like we talked about, and you can annotate on it as well. With Huddle, you can do audio recording on it as well. So if you prefer to do that, then you don't have to write notes with it. You can just talk at it, and then you've got a nice audio video as well. Easy to lose context, like we talked about, so that's definitely a con. And the biggest thing that I think you need to do if you're a video and someone's got a problem is try and replicate what causes that injury. So if you've got an athlete that comes in going, I get the problem after an hour, there's no point in filming them for 5 minutes as soon as they've got there. When you're running, your biomechanics will not settle back into their normal sort of running style for about 6 to 10 minutes. So unless they've done a warm-up and you're trying to replicate that setting, okay, you're kind of losing that context. You're not getting that situation, because I look very different jogging to what I do when I'm running quick. So you need to look at, when did they get the problem, how can I replicate that as well? And I think that will make it a lot easier to solve the problem, or at least get in the right direction of solving the problem anyway. And then repeatability. So think about, how am I going to make this? So when we looked at one video and then looked at one 3 months later, like if you're recording up here one time and you're going, I'm going to really get into it today, you're completely different angles. So lighting's going to change. You're going to see different foot contact. So make it repeatable. So if you've got a tripod you can use, or if you've got something you can prop up that you always know is there, So, for example, if a treadmill's a much easier way of making something repeatable, then that's what I'd recommend. Really, it's just have your own little sort of ways of doing things and keep to them. That's probably the best way of going about it, really. So, what is normal? There's a $1 million question. Okay, so normal movement may be considered as a skill acquired through learning or development for the purpose of achieving the most efficient or economical movement or performance of a given task and is specific to the individual. Basically, move efficiently at speed with at least energy expenditure. So that's what we're trying to do. But sort of the key words from that is specific to the individual. Okay, so here, got a bunch of Kenyans, leaving the rest of us behind. 4 of them very much in sync, a little bit of hip drop under Barber, but the rest of them very good foot strike, good running form. And then we got what's that name again? Jet 2, who's very much not got the perfect style as we predict. However, she's a pretty good runner. She runs 2:20 for a marathon. Would you change that? Let's have a look at her running. There we go. So this is Jet 2. So this is in 2011 in the World Championship Marathon. Okay, she came second. Fair bit to work on. Yeah. So like we can see, knees coming inwards, feet leaning outwards. But if you were to draw a line down the middle, okay, she's fairly symmetrical. Okay, and that's probably why she gets away with it. If it was just one arm doing it, then you'd probably go, you're just asking for trouble. But she actually is quite symmetrical. So again, they're probably not going to go, well, let's try and change too much with this, because a bit of a double-edged sword. And one to think about with that individual athlete approach is you could change her, but her skeletal system, how she's set up, may not tolerate that, and it might actually injure her. So she may have never actually made that World Championships had we tried to correct that too much. So, but then you could go, well, if I corrected it, she might have won. So it's, like I say, it's one to think about, and one to where your drills and your strength and conditioning come in, and it might actually naturally change things as opposed to forcing something back to basics. But then if you could look at, there was a video going around last year of Mo Farah, like before he went to training with Salazar, and he had his feet were turning outwards when he was sprinting down the home straight, and then afterwards they're pointing forwards, and he got pretty good, didn't he? So again, it's trying to keep it in context and trying to look at what you're trying to achieve from it, and I think that makes a big difference. Okay, and then we go on to this guy, pretty handy runner as well. So Moses Mosop, pretty immaculate form, that, isn't it? So nice forward lean with his body, so he's carrying his speed. Okay, watches his leg comes through. Really slow. Okay, foot strikes right below the knee. So watch as that changes. Okay, right underneath, good position, already accelerating through. Okay, little bit of rotation with the shoulders, that's not a problem. Hips facing forward at all times. So that transfer of power, brilliant. And as I say, it's got good hip extension out the back as well. If we looked at Rutu, probably from the side, maybe wouldn't have as much extension, because she's probably getting it through internal rotation to get that flick. So two very different runners, two very good runners though. Moses, 12:54, 26:49, 2:03 marathon. Pretty handy. How do we approach it? You need to, like we said before, you need to, and I'll keep badgering on about this point, you need to replicate the aggravating conditions. But you need to think about how you're doing it as well. So treadmill or road, what do most people do? Probably field testing, do it on the track? Track, yeah. Probably one of the most ways you'll do it more often, because it's a little bit harder to get your athletes on the treadmill, but treadmill is definitely more repeatable. There's lots of evidence to say that treadmill doesn't change your running style that much. I would probably disagree. I feel I run differently on a treadmill, and I probably say a lot of you would see the same as well. But as long as you're getting a similar setup, and you're using that to repeat the measure each time, because there's no point looking at someone on a treadmill and then retesting them on the track, because you'll just lose that context and they'll be running slightly differently. As I alluded to before, you need to let them do a warm-up before you sort of you go into that sort of normal sort of speed that they have an issue with. So if it's after an hour for the marathon runners, endurance runners of the audience here, get them to go out and do their hour run, then have a look at them. Get them to do hour and a half run, then come back and have a look, because otherwise you're not going to see what you're looking for. And then have a way that you're going to look at it. So bottom up or top down. Okay, so if you're higgledy-piggledy, when you're looking at things, you'll miss things. So start from the bottom and work to the head, or work from the head and work down to the toes. I tend to work with a bottom-up approach, because you can see, well, I don't know, that's my preferred method of doing it really. So there is no right or wrong with that one. And then consider sort of markers and clothing. I wouldn't get too wound up in markers. You're going too much into depth with it then. But clothing is quite an important one. If you've got baggy clothing on, okay, you're not really going to be able to see what's happening with the hips, with the knees, with the shoulders. So something that's a little bit tight, a bit more clip, is generally seen as better for being able to observe what's going on when they're running. Okay, and then look at from two approaches. So side view, rear view, probably the two I'd go for. You're not going to see as much from the front, and they'll probably run you over if you're trying to film them. But rear view, again, you can see that. If you see that foot strike, and side view, you can see a lot as well.
Of the video. Part 2 will be being shown on the 27th of April at 6 o'clock. So I've noticed somebody's written a video, so I hope you'll been able to watch that with me. So I've just put on a few notes on this slide now, just some of the things that came out on the video. So Coach's Eye and Huddle app are the apps that he was discussing. Huddle is the free app. Coach's Eye is the paid app. So for those of you who don't want to pay anything, I'd use Huddle. I've used that one myself and find it quite easy to use. And the things he was saying was we're using it as an assistance to our own Coach's Eye, which obviously is the thing that we're using the most. But as Mike said, in terms of athlete feedback, athletes usually, it's quite good to sort of have a visual feedback as well as just your verbal feedback. I know myself, when I was an athlete, I could understand how my body was moving more when I did it. So that's something that I think, is well worth thinking about, especially if you're doing something technical. Use the highest frame rate possible. Use the video analysis for comparisons and feedback to the athletes, which I've just said. And also you're able to import from other devices such as GoPro. He talked about the pros and cons, and I just picked out a few that I thought were quite useful. So in context of the athlete history, so from that, we're talking about if the athletes had any injuries, why are we filming them in the first place? Are we filming them to look at ways that you can avoid injuries? So we're filming their running technique, and this is something we can share with our team. So physio, your strength and conditioning coach, or yourself, if you're trying to figure out why things are going wrong with a certain running style, or is it is it to do with technique? So something that you're just going to share with the athlete. Trying to replicate the problem to solve the problem. So as Mike was saying, if your athlete says they're only getting a pain in their glute an hour into a run, there's not much point watching jog on a treadmill for 30 seconds. You probably need to see them analyze the video from an hour into training to see what's happening, see if things are getting fatigued, and see if you can work on things to solve. A repeatable type of analysis, so using the same angles, the same surface, such as a treadmill or a track, wearing clothing that you can see the movement of the body, and using a side and rear view. And just again, thinking about what you're actually trying to achieve from the filming. Are you trying to, what are you actually trying to work on, and what use are you having for this filming? So I think that's both for you and the athlete, whether, so the athlete knows why you're filming them. It's not just to put on Instagram, it's to actually try and help them achieve something and get better at something. And of course, the last two, which I think are really important, so it's specific to the individual's running form, because not always, like with the video of Jeptu, maybe things could be done in Jeptu's running form, but actually she's already amazing. So in terms of her performances then, maybe not so much now, but does she actually need to change anything to make herself better? we'll see. So if Andy, if you want to put some questions on the screen now, I'll see if I can answer them, or it might be just some observations or shared knowledge that some of you have had. So feel free to type in the question box if you have any questions, and we'll open the floor to them. Bear with us, a few technical hitches. All right, I've managed to do that. I don't know whether a few technical hitches with our webinar presentation. So I often struggle deciding the best remedy. For example, have an athlete who is really heavy heel striker, quads are always trash and often has lower limb issues. Should I try to change it? And if so, how? Well, that's a difficult one to answer. If I've not seen the athlete running, I think it might be worth doing some video analysis and then going along to a physio and seeing if they can suggest anything in terms of running style, strength and conditioning exercises. It might be that they need to condition their lower limbs a little bit more to bring them into play when they're running, because if they're very quad dominant, which is what it sounds like, they might not be strong through their lower limbs. So that would be my suggestion for that. I can't see any of the questions, so I'm just doing the questions on the screen myself at the moment, so bear with me if it's taking me a while. Right. Is symmetry one of the major concerns? For example, it might be okay to be tighter than average, but more of a worry if there is a big difference in symmetry, as the difference could lead to injuries. Yeah, I guess that's what we're looking for ultimately. Obviously, I'd say most people, athletes that you see, it's very rare to be completely symmetrical. But if there's a reason for that, the difference from side to side, I would say, you know, you have to ask the question, is it because they have, you know, weaker muscles on one side to the other? Is there a weakness that can be evened out a little bit? If you're tighter, is there some type of, you know, massage, stretching, rolling that can be done to alleviate that problem? And that could help in terms of symmetry. So I'd say that's something that would be worth looking at, in my opinion. Are there any child welfare issues with video in younger ones? Yeah, I'd say we always have to get permission to use videos with anyone, and your athletics club welfare officer should be able to give you information about that. You always need to get permission from the parents if you're going to use the video. If it's just for your coaching eye, as long as you're sharing that with the parent and not putting it out there for public viewing, then the parent's happy with that, then that should be fine. Trying to get some more questions on the screen. Apologies about this. Right. So, thanks, Basha. My tip is to use the child's phone, that they use their own footage, not the coach. That's a really good coach's tip from Basha. Obviously, the child is then in charge of that footage. It's not on the coach's phone. So that's a great suggestion, Basha, and obviously avoids that sort of child welfare sort of worry that we all have if you are using video and having permission. It is definitely something where if you're doing it on a club night, it's definitely worth speaking with your club about it in terms of getting that permission. Sort of performance level athletes, I think it's probably quite commonplace to use video analysis in terms of helping with technique. So again, just cover yourself at all corners and make sure you have permission from the athlete, from the parent, if that's applicable. Yeah, I'll just put this one on. From Paul, thanks Paul. As welfare officer, I advise you get permission in writing from parents or guardians and use the child's or parents' phones. That's very good advice. What age stage would you start to consider strength training in a gym with weights for endurance runners? Which exercises would you consider essential for endurance runners? So this is a little bit off topic. Obviously, we're looking at video analysis tonight. But I think there's some form of conditioning. Not all strength training is in a gym with weights, but there's some forms of conditioning that you can start depending on the child, the athletic age of the child. I would say would be the main thing to look at. So where they are in terms of their own development. So there's not really a definite age, but definitely the stage of development. If there is areas that you can start working at, and it might be that you start off doing circuit work, stuff at the track as a group, and then which will progress them to doing things with resistance and weights. If you've in a few weeks' time, I'm going to be doing a webinar. It's a steeplechase one, but it's open to everybody, and we're going to be going through some strength and conditioning exercises for steeplechase. But I would say that would probably be quite worthwhile watching in terms of most of the exercises are probably pretty applicable for all endurance athletes. Trying to see if there's any more questions I've not answered. Here we are. Once an athlete has been identified with the athlete's form and it's been filmed, reviewed, and a plan of action is put in place, how long would you leave it before reviewing again? I guess it depends what the issue is. If it's something that you're going to go away, so for example, one thing we discussed earlier was looking at something to do with an injury, so using the video analysis to share with your team. So it might be that you go to the physio, go to the S&C coach, then do a period of training where you're putting into place some exercises, some drills, for example, that might help avoid the issue happening again, or maybe get the athletes stronger so that they have better form. Then it might be worth having a reasonable period of time before reviewing that again. Like I said, this is a first part of the video, so I'm sure that in part 2 Mike will be going into more detail on how long we should wait. Do you have any examples from personal experience and how video analysis has helped you or some of your coach? So yeah, from my own experience, I would say the main reasons I've used video as from my athlete experience, the reasons I've felt video analysis was very, very helpful was in the gym. So learning new techniques, especially in Olympic lifts, and lots of exercises actually where you sort of, I'm definitely a visual learner. So, if I saw myself do something wrong or right, then I would know how to correct it easier than if somebody told me verbally. Also, when I was competing in steeplechase, as that was completely different in terms of technical a technical event. I found that the video analysis of just sort of seeing what I was actually doing and how and trying to get in my head how to change that, definitely having the video helped me there. And then in terms of my own coaching, yeah, definitely for the I coach Jermaine Coleman, who's a steeplechaser, and we quite often will film hurdles in training, just running over hurdles. We'll film the drills that we use just to get them right, and also because I distance coach Jermaine part of the year, using the video analysis for us is very important because we can share things even though we're not necessarily together all the time. So that's really, really useful. So there's another question on the screen now. Is there a difference in approaching to changing form between young and older club athletes, given the older athletes will have been running for way longer? Yeah, I guess you just have to look at each athlete as an individual. Each athlete has a different story and a different, they may have been doing another sport before they came to athletics, or they may be completely green to sports. So it might be that they have completely different, conditioning levels to somebody else of the same age. So I think you have to look at each athlete as an individual. In terms of older athletes, yeah, I guess it's the same answer really. I think you just have to look at the individual and what it is you need and what you're looking for to change. So I think obviously the way you pitch that to the athlete would be different depending on their age. So this is a great tip from Katie, saying that the movement skills course was really good for looking for markers and energy leaks. So that's really good, Katie. Thanks for sharing that. So obviously, once we're back to normality, that's probably a course that will be out there again. So it's definitely one to look into if you haven't already attended it. So looking for the next question. This one's quite a good one. Thanks. Bring it back to the subject. The book by Richard Blagrove on strength and conditioning for endurance runners covers all ages, kids to masters, and includes body screening to look for technical leaks. Videoing would be great for this. I agree, Michael. Yeah, definitely. If you have, books or rules that you have that you want to go through with the athletes that you're coaching, it's great to use them video techniques to learn that skill, and to also it would be great to do the screening and do the before and after like we discussed earlier. So coming back, doing the screening at the beginning of the year or in the winter, let's say, and then going off and doing all your training and your exercises that you're going to do in that training block, and then reviewing it by using the video analysis again. So yeah, I agree with you there. It would be really useful. Five more minutes for more questions before we wrap up. Thanks, Andy. So if there's any more questions, just put them on the screen. If not, we will finish off.